contingent of all Americans that are here showing up in Copenhagen to demonstrate dynamic U.S. leadership. The people that are sitting at this table up here have been doing that in the United States and in England. And we are very, very pleased that one of the most significant movements is represented at this table. And of course, everyone knows I'm talking about the 350.org that has transformed the awareness on the issue, especially in the last 12 months. And so I would like to begin by asking Professor Bill McGibbon, to my right on the end here, to begin with opening remarks and specifically address President Obama's remarks not more than 2 hours ago in the Bella Center. Thank you.
Well, thank you enormously, and it's very good to be here and very good to be sharing this platform with people who've done amazing work, some of whom, like David, I've known forever and ever and just been leading the way, and everybody whose work I've admired. We've worked mostly globally this past year at 350.org, building the first big global grassroots climate movement. And successfully, in a sense, we had the most widespread day of political action in the planet's history in late October, with 5,200 demonstrations in 181 countries. And we played some role in getting the science into these negotiations here, and I think in giving a certain amount of support and courage to the poorest and most vulnerable nations on Earth. As of today, 116 of the nations in this world were backing a 350 parts per million target. The last time I was in this audience, in this hall on Monday, I was warming up the crowd for Mohammed Nasheed from the Maldives, who came on and gave a truly powerful talk, a great leader. The reason that we've been successful is because we've been engaged conscientiously in telling the truth as best we can. We've taken the science that the best scientists have given us, we've spread it around the world. People have been able to understand what that science means and act on it. The problem we're going to face in the US in the next year is that we're going to be asked to deal with something considerably less than that truth. And that's really been the hallmark of the last few days of this conference, as the big powers have asserted themselves, and it's really been a display of pretty naked power. And we got one glimpse behind the curtain at that dishonesty yesterday, thanks to whoever leaked those documents out of the Secretariat to the Guardian and others. They made it very clear that even the UN, even the people, especially the people stage managing this place, understand that there's an awful lot of dishonesty. The 2-degree target that everyone's been talking about forever, and which scientists have now shown dramatically is nowhere near enough. If 0.8 of a degree melts the Arctic, why do we want to find out what 2 degrees is? Turns out, in fact, not even to be 2 degrees. If you add up all the proposals of the developed countries and the expected proposals of the developing countries, then this agreement that President Obama was talking so tough about 2 hours ago turns out to be one that raises the temperature of the planet 3 degrees Celsius. Converted to Fahrenheit, that means endless floods, endless drought, nations disappearing beneath the sea, an entirely different planet, one that eventually will have no ice on it at all. That's what 3 degrees Celsius is talking about. And in the US, I know what's going to happen in the next few months as we head towards the Senate debate, which is on a bill unlikely even to achieve the insanely modest targets that the president laid out. Civil society, those of us who have built and led movements and things, are going to come under enormous pressure to ask what followers and supporters and things our movements have to rally them behind essentially dishonest pieces of legislation. We're going to be told again and again that political reality needs to bow, scientific reality needs to bow to political reality at all times. And that's a reasonable argument, because somehow you have to get something going in the US and you've got to get something through the Senate and whatever else. But it's a hell of a hard argument to make to people. People have the idea that movements can be turned on and off the way that a water tap can be, and you just sort of tell everybody, show up in Washington to protest for whatever incredibly weak piece of legislation you've put forward. What today's speech demonstrated to me is that Barack Obama still doesn't want to stretch on this issue. That he's so far exerted very little in the way of leadership. Now, I don't say that happily. I was almost the first person to sign on to Environmentalists for Obama last year. Since I live in Vermont, next door to New Hampshire, I spent most of my weekends in the fall over walking the streets of Nashua and Manchester and Keene and Hanover, knocking on doors and handing out leaflets, and I was exultant the day that Obama was elected. And compared to all the alternatives, he's a remarkable president. But he hasn't expended one penny of political capital on global warming. He's treated it as a second or third tier issue to be addressed after everything else. He's allowed the Senate to go ahead with the process of assembling a bill that turns more and more into a turkey with each passing day. And if you think it looks bad now, take a look at what's happening in the waning days of the healthcare debate in the United States as the bill gets laden with more and more things. We're in a problem. We're in a box here, and one of the ways that we're going to get out of it is by building ever stronger movements, and we're trying really hard to do that. But one of the ways we're going to get out of it too is by showing some leadership from the White House. Leadership that to this point we have not seen. It was instructive to be in here with President Nasheed and see what it looks like when a president decides that they're going to take real action. When they, A, commit their countries to difficult policies, the Maldives will be carbon neutral inside of 10 years. B, when they're willing to put their all on the world stage to make this happen. You cannot believe the pressure that small countries have been coming under this week here in Copenhagen. We've talked to small countries who have been told by the US and China and others that to worry about their IMF loans, to worry about aid of all kinds, the most incredible pressure that some of them have been able to stand up against that is a sign of the fact they realize that their survival is at stake and that they are back to the wall. We also saw in President Nasheed and some others a willingness to understand how to go about communicating this. When I was in the Maldives this summer, helping organize there, and a meeting with President Nasheed, started explaining the 350 things. Oh, don't worry, I understand all the science. And I have an idea. Here's what we're going to do on October 24th. I'm going to teach my entire cabinet to scuba dive, and we will have an underwater cabinet meeting on our dying coral reef to send a resolution to Copenhagen. Well, they did that, and it was on the front page of most of the newspapers around the world the day they did it. It was enormously effective. President Obama's not going to hold an underwater cabinet meeting in Key West. We're in a different political culture, okay? But there's no reason that he couldn't fire up Air Force One and make sure the press corps in the course of a day overflew Glacier National Park, which will have no glaciers inside of 20 years, saw the millions of acres of dead pine trees that now dot the Rocky Mountains of the American West, visited the dwindling snowpack of the Sierra Nevada, which Energy Secretary Chu said in February might be gone by the end of the century, rendering, in his words, agriculture impossible in California, and I'm not sure how you're going to live in the big cities either. These are the kind of phrases and images that we need out of the White House if we're going to have some hope of messaging this in the ways that we need to message it. It's going to be a hard push as it is, but I'll just close by saying we're incredibly eager, those of us in these movements, to work with the White House and anybody else as much as we can. On October 24th, when we had 2,000 demonstrations across the United States, we talked to people in the White House, high up in the White House, saying, send us anyone. Send us the assistant undersecretary for going to unimportant events, you know, and have them come someplace on that day and make a statement, and that'll be big help.